My name is Jason, and this is Just Watches. All right, the battery in my EFV 100D died, so I figured I'm going to switch the battery. I might as well make a video of it so you can see how it's done. So I have laid out everything you might need to do this process. At minimum, you're going to need something to hold the watch so you can get the case back off, a certain caseback opener. Now there's 2-prong and 3-prong versions. This is a 3-prong version. This is actually, I got kind of lucky with this tool. In the world of watch tools, it seems like there's very cheap stuff which tends to break or not be very good, and then very expensive stuff from like Bergeon that's, very expensive but also very high quality. This one was kind of in the middle, and I've had good results with it so far. So I'm going to leave a link for that in the description. And then of course you'll need the battery, and then ideally you'd have plastic tweezers. I actually don't have plastic tweezers, so I'm going to be very careful and use my brass tweezers in this case. And then some optional equipment, you can have a mat to work on. I have this mat I got. Toothbrush, you don't have to do this, but you can brush around the edge of the back of the case before you open it, just in case there's any dust or particulate in there that you don't want to fall into the watch itself. And then finally, because I do a little bit of watch tinkering and disassembly of movements, I do have finger cots, which I might utilize in this case. But I would say these last 3 things are optional. All you really need is the holder, the battery, some way to open the case back, some implement to assist you with maybe removing some pieces and getting the battery, and then the watch. So the first thing you want to do is get the watch into this holder. Now there's a lot of holders like this. This one's a pretty big one, which I like because what you can do here is there's these 4 areas here that you can move these pins to kind of get the right angles for the watch. And then you're going to open it by spinning it counterclockwise. And what you want to do is get it kind of wide, and then you're going to want to put the watch in. And be mindful of where these posts are going to putting pressure on the watch. You don't want them putting a lot of pressure on the crown. Now you can see the way I have it lined up here. These are actually going to go above and below the crown guard, and then these ones will be on the right side. So you're just going to tighten it down by turning clockwise now, and you're going to get good pressure on the watch. And just watch how the watch is seating in there. You just want to make sure they're making kind of nice even pressure. It's not going to slide laterally, and you're not putting any like shear pressure on the crown here. So I'm just going to keep tightening it down until I get it nice and tight. Now I think these are rubber, so they do have a little bit of give, so you can get it nice and tight here, and then you can just kind of check, see if you have any play. And once you think you have it real tight, you will be in good shape for opening the case back. Okay, now this step is optional. I'm going to take a soft bristle toothbrush here, and I'm just going to give a little bit of a brush around the edge of the case. I'm trying to get the bristles to go in between that space where the case back and the case proper meet, and just try to dislodge if there's any dust or particulate matter that has gotten stuck there, just because when I open the case back, I don't want that stuff falling inside the watch case itself. So I'm going to go around twice here, just trying to get those bristles to go into that area. And then you can either use a blower, or I have some compressed air here, and I'm just going to give it a blow and try to blow away anything I might have dislodged. So with the back of the case cleaned, I am now going to use, this is a 3-point caseback remover. So a couple things, it comes with a lot of different tips. Generally, you're going to use these square tips. Those will line up with the notches around the edge of this case. Sometimes they will use different shapes, and this kit actually came with a lot of different shapes that you can use, but generally, these are the ones that I find are the most common. So what you're going to want to do is first you're going to want to line up these 2 with 2 of the notches on the case. And you can adjust how wide these 2 stand by using this lever here. So you'll start kind of wide, and then you will tighten it down until you're clamped on 2 of the slots. And then this last one you can adjust going left or right with the handle, and then you'll want to cinch that down as well. So one other thing I forgot to mention, you can actually rotate these squares in these pegs, and you do want them to be almost at 45-degree angles. So as you're lining up with the case back, look at how the squares are aligning with these notches in the case back. You want to make sure they're flush. So this one you want to make sure is hitting all 3 sides flush with this way, and then this one's going to have to be at an angle this way, and you can't rotate them. So you basically want all 3 points to be making perfectly flush contact. So take your time and rotate them until you see that they are sitting in those notches correctly. All right, so I believe I have it lined up. I feel like I have these two notches in and then I've tightened this last notch. So they're all seated properly in the case back. And now this is the risk where you're gonna scratch the back of your case, because if you turn this and it slips, those posts are gonna scrape along the back of the case back, and then you'll mar your watch, which can happen. You just wanna be really careful here. So to get it right, for everything to work, you wanna make sure these are aligned. You're putting some nice downward pressure into the case back here. And then you also want to make sure you're holding tightly. I like to hold the holder itself and then maybe the edges of the watch. And all I want to do here is apply enough pressure to break the seal of the screw down back. I'm not trying to unwind the whole thing. And I think that's where you might get yourself in trouble. I'm not going to do a big turn. I'm ideally only going to turn this about 5 to 10 degrees to break the seal on the case back. Okay, so it did prove too difficult to be done under the camera, so I apologize. I had to do it off camera. However, I got it. Basically, I just turned it about 15 degrees, and then I gave it. And then as you're opening it, I go ahead and you might want to do this again where you clean. I noticed that some grime kind of started to appear between the edge of the case and the case back. So before I open it all the way, I'm just going to give it another little clean with the soft bristle toothbrush. And then, holding the case back in place because it is loose now, I'll also give it another shot of compressed air. And now that the tool's done the hard work, you can literally just turn it with your fingers. I've down my finger cots here to loosen it the rest of the way. And then you can just pop the case back right off. And you will have access to the watch. Now, one thing in mind, keep taking a look at this gasket. This is what's providing your waterproof, some of the waterproof to the back of the case. You want to make sure that gasket is in good shape. And this one looks fine. So I'm going to just tuck this away under my little glass dome, and then we will work on getting this battery changed. Okay, so now we have this plastic retention ring. We're going to want to get this out. I had to kind of play with it for a little while, but I've discovered how it's being held in there. So you want to be very careful. Probably use plastic tweezers. Don't use brass tweezers like me, but I'm going to be very careful not to touch the coil or anything like that. And I just applied some pressure here to lift it up. And then once I had that lifted up, it is seated on this side, kind of down and into the side of the watch. So I am going to actually flip it 180 degrees so I can use my finger cots. And by lifting over here, I am going to just grab it with my finger cotted fingers and then pull it out. Oh, maybe. Pull it out the rest of the way. So now this is where you'd want to document the way you took it out. So if I was documenting this with a picture, I would take a picture like this, just having it lined up so I could remember the way that it goes back on. And then you can just kind of inspect this piece that we took it out. So we applied some pressure in the middle, and it does have, it looks like it seats in like this, and then you can push it back down. So just remember which way this went, take a picture of it so you can put it back in the right orientation. Okay, now we're on to the battery. So the battery on here is actually an SR927W. I didn't buy the original brand, but I got this Energizer 395, 399, and it says replaces all SR927Ws. So hopefully this one is going to work to replace that one. Okay, and since I don't have plastic tweezers, I think you'd want to use maybe plastic tweezers to get this out. I do have this toothpick. So I'm just going to use a toothpick and I'm going to wedge it under the edge of the battery, and then I'm just going to pop it out like that. And it looks like there's two little metal retention clips here. There's this one on this side, and then there's this one on this side that kind of grasps the battery. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in kind of on the opposite side of those and then try to seat it in that way. All right, and now I am hearing a click, which is a good sign. Before you put this all back together, and just flip the watch over and double check that is running. So with the watch indeed running, we are going to reverse the steps to put it back together. All right, so this is where your documentation would come in handy. I actually rotated it so the crown is facing me, because what I noticed about this piece is the crown goes into this bottom notch here, and then on the top you'll notice there's this little part that's extending, and if you look on the inside of the case, there's actually a place for that to tuck under. So I actually just did this and then took it back out. So I'll try to do it on camera, but it's a little tricky. Basically, you're going to want that little notch to align at the 12 o'clock position there, and then this goes down towards the crown, and then when you have it seated correctly, that notch will actually, oh, it just did it. It clicked in and under the case, and then I'm just going to go around and apply some pressure to make sure it's properly seated all the way around. But yeah, that's what you're looking for, is that there's a little tab on the very top of this plastic retention ring, and it will be clicked in and under the case, and that's how you know you have it in the correct position. And now it's just the simple matter of putting our case back on. So we're going to make sure so you'll notice here the gasket is a little loose. So we want to make sure we want this to screw into place. So we've got to be really careful that we don't screw on and over the gasket. So I'm just going to make sure it's seated up as much as I can. And then I'm going to place it down. And I'm going to slowly, very slowly, I'm going to give it a little bit of back play to try to find the groove and just make sure that gasket is seating. And then I'm going to start going clockwise when I think I have it. And you'll notice it will start to grip. And you shouldn't feel any resistance if that gasket's correctly seated. It feels like it is. And it's just going now very easy under just finger pressure. And I can feel it slowly going down. And what you're going to do is you get it to the point where you can't really tighten it anymore with your fingers. And then just like we use that 3-prong tool to break the seal on this case back, we're going to use it to reapply the seal. So we're going to use it to then tighten it. So I've gone as far as I can with my fingers, but I'm going to tighten it about 10 or 15 degrees more with the tool. All right, so now the case back is tightened down. We did a good job. We didn't slip and mar the back of our case back. But keep in mind now, if you had a water pressure tester or an air pressure tester, you would want to retest. I think anytime you open and reapply the case back, you're throwing your water resistance a little bit into question. So I don't really take my watches underwater or anything like that, so I'm not super worried about it. But if you did this with like a diver or something like that, you are going to want to water pressure test it before you trust it to go diving or something like that again. Just because once you've opened the case and put it back on, you really don't know if it still has the full water resistance rating as it did when it was probably tested after manufacturing. All right, so there's the watch ticking away with new life. Hopefully this battery lasts 3 more years. I will leave a link to the battery I used as well as some of the tools you saw in the video. As always, if you're enjoying the content of this channel, I invite you to subscribe. And if you like the contents of this individual video, please give it a thumbs up. Until next time, my name is Jason, and you have been watching Just Watches.